My name is Mariam Lambert. I'm the co-founder of the Emile Foundation. So it's an organization that was created in 2011, focusing on different countries. And since the 24th of February 2022, we decided to unite all our efforts in order to help Ukraine since the beginning of the war, together with our Ukrainian colleague. So just to be very brief, we've been doing a lot of humanitarian work. I've been myself in different areas in Ukraine, in the frontline villages, evacuating civilians and donating humanitarian aid to people, civilians and children. But since 2023, we focused mainly on children who are deported, who are abducted, stolen by the Russian. Why today it's very important? Because it's been 4 years, and our organization is really working hard together with other international organizations, with the Ukrainian government, to locate, to identify, to retrieve those children who've been not only stolen but also given for adoption to the Russian. So today it is important because after 4 years there are so many coalitions, there are so many people who are trying their best to return those children, but not enough effort has been made. And this topic, unfortunately, is no longer on the high priority of the agenda. As you can see in the peace deal agreement, it's more about transaction, it's more about territories, but people are the future of Ukraine. People are the most important aspect of this peace deal. And this is why today we hope that we will explain you different area where we work, specifically in Kherson Oblast, and why this topic needs to be constantly, every day on the agenda, because people like Anna that you will hear, the mother of Anton, is wondering and is asking all of us, what are we doing? Why her son is not back today after 4 years? Thank you.
З початком повномасштабного вторгнення заклади Херсонщини опинилися під окупацією, і одним із цих закладів був Олешківський будинок-інтернат для дітей із певними захворюваннями і дітей із необхідністю бути постійно під медичним супроводом. Такі діти не могли залишатися вдома з батьками, тому що їм був постійно потрібен спеціальний медичний супровід. І Олешківський інтернат опинився під окупацією у 2022 році, і спроби евакуації цього інтернату були невдалими. Під обстрілами персонал закладу намагався допомогти дітям, і безрезультатно вони чекали півроку на евакуацію. Одним із вихователів цього інтернату, який залишався з дітьми в цей важкий, неймовірно важкий період, був Вадим Реуцький. І ми одразу надамо йому слово і просимо пана Вадима розказати про його роль тоді, в 2022 році, про те, що відбувалося тоді там, чи вдалося після цього, що він знає про повернення дітей і який стан повернень сьогодні з цього дітей з цього інтернату, що відомо на сьогоднішній день, і також доля цього закладу. Пане Вадиме, чи ви нас чуєте?
Доброго дня, так чую.
Я просто не бачу, чи можна на екран вивести? Так, пане Вадиме, добрий день. Надаємо вам слово. Розкажіть, будь ласка, про вашу роль тоді і до якого часу ви допомагали цим дітям, і що відомо про долю цього закладу і дітей на сьогоднішній день, будь ласка.
Доброго дня ще раз всім присутнім. Яка моя роль була? Напевно, як і любого свідомого громадянина України, ніхто не знав, що буде далі, була суцільна паніка, але за нами, за вихователями, за співробітниками була відповідальність, це діти. І ми не могли нести паніку якусь, показувати дітям, що нам страшно, хоча внутрі все палало і горіло, тому що навіть дорослі не розуміли, що відбувається, не кажучи про дітей. Ось. І перші три тижні це були, напевно, дуже самі складні. Тому що тяжко пояснити дітям, чому все взривається навколо, наче Новий рік вже пройшов, а вони чують взриви не від салютів, якісь радощі, а просто лунають серії вибухів, гради і все таке інше. Але ми знаходили якісь механізми свої педагогічні, проводили якісь ігри. Звісно, тяжко було це все проводити в підвалах, коли на день тобі доводиться по 5-6 разів дітей евакуювати в підвали, а тих дітей, які були тяжкі хворі, максимум, що ми могли, це просто викатувати їх на ліжках просто в коридор. Тому що, як правило, 2 стін, скажімо так, ось це максимум того, що ми могли зробити для них, а всі решта ми постійно спускали в підвали. Було холодно, сховища були також на вулицях, вони також були не підлаштовані для цього всього, тобто ми намагалися якось мобільно підлаштуватися під це все. Ну, таке. Знаєте, я для себе багато разів моделював цю ситуацію і намагався хоча б для себе відповісти.
And I tried to at least imagine, could we have evacuated the children during the first 2 or 3 days? And I didn't find the good answer for myself. How could we do it, even despite the fact I was staying here? Because many people are asking me, why didn't you evacuate the children? Why didn't you do anything? Well, we literally couldn't. I was asking this question to myself many times and I didn't come up with an answer. We were really scared, and everyone in the country was in panic. Everyone, even in Kiev, had no idea what would happen. No one knew what would happen to Kiev, whether the Kiev would prevail. After the enemy troops retreated from Kiev, there was a little bit more certainty. But, well, our role was to support the children. It was difficult, it wasn't easy, but I believe we succeeded. We had around 5 evacuation attempts. Different charities and foundations tried something. I'm not really competent in this matter. Our principal was responsible for it. Children were ready. Every child has a small backpack with the most essential things, so at any moment we just woke children up. They get up from bed and packed their suitcases. Everything was ready in medical terms as well. But unfortunately, the occupation administration sent troops to us, threatened and intimidated everyone. We've heard you were planning evacuation. If you try to evacuate once again, you will regret it. It was terrible, really terrible, because there was no one in the boarding school except for children and elderly women. I was the youngest person there. And these creatures came in and threatened civilians at gunpoint. What is the further fate of the institution? Well, according to my own estimations, 66 children are still staying in occupation. Around 40 children were somehow retrieved. So children who had parents or children in custody were returned. Of course, every story was unique and terrifying, because people, children, guardians really went through hell to pick up their kids, because Russians already immediately produced documents, and then sometimes at the border my mother came to pick up her child through the Georgia, and she wanted to leave, and she was asked, how did your child end up here in the first place? Well, you occupied the area and you abducted the child. Why are you asking me? Clearly, this child has Russian passport. So that's really absurd things happening in the story of every family. Now I struggle to give you any information because unfortunately it's very difficult to come in touch with the children. Sometimes we do keep in touch, but it's really complicated and challenging. Of course, children are growing up, and the worst thing is to lose connection to them. So one day they just scatter all across Russia, and then I have no idea how we would be bringing them back. Mr. Vadim, thank you so much. If possible, I saw the number 84 and 85. So how much children were abducted by Russians from the boarding school? I struggle to tell you the exact number. It happened I was in occupation with children until November 4th. On November 4th, the Russians evacuated children as the Russian army liberated the right bank bank of Kherson region. On November 11th, the whole orphanage, the whole boarding school, already moved to Skadovsk. And currently in temporarily occupied Skadovsk, there is a kindergarten. Well, it used to be a kindergarten. They turned it into an orphanage. And as long as I know, they keep the children there. 3 girls are still staying in the Russian Federation. So, after Skadovsk, children were divided into 2 groups. Children below the age of 18 staying in Skadovsk, while adults, after turning 18, are moved to the area of Strelkove. For already adults were moved to Penza. We successfully bring 1 young man back, while 3 girls are still staying there. They really want to come back, but unfortunately we don't have any mechanism to do it. Just to take custody, maybe through the custody we would do it. Thank you so much. And another question for you. One additional follow-up question, just to make it clear. You mentioned 40 children. These 40 children, some of them returned home by family members and relatives independently through their own efforts, right? And does it also include children who returned after they were deported? Yes, it's approximate number. I don't have exact figures right now, but yes, around 40 children returned home after the start of the full-scale invasion. These children were deported. When the war started, some parents came in to pick up their kids. Then various programs and charities offered assistance. Thank you so much. Thank you for what have you done for these children, and thank you so much for joining us today for this discussion. And today we also have Hanna Zamyshlyaeva joining us today, mother of Anton Volkovich. Anton was a student at Oleshky in boarding school. Anton had a neurological condition that requires constant medication. And I think now we should give floor to his mother so she can share his story, please. Hello, everyone. Anton, my older son, the oldest of my 3 children, because I also have a younger son and a daughter. Anton was born premature. It was beloved child. Before him, I had a stillbirth, so I really waited for Anton. But he was a little bit in a rush to born. So we spent the first 3 months in Kherson Regional Hospital, circulating from ICU to surgery unit, wandering around different buildings. He had several brain surgeries. He had grafts due to elevated intracranial pressure. And only after 3 months we returned home. We were discharged, and then the rehabilitation process started. For the first 3 months, we were fighting for his life, and then he slowly started to recover. We wanted to do everything we could in order to make sure Anton grows in a family next to normotypical children and is accepted by society. Then I gave birth to Nastya. Back then Anton was 1.5 years old. He just followed her, he started to walk, he started to crawl, and he started to walk, he started to talk. Many people thought he was absolutely healthy boy, and they were twins. Everything was amazing. We just attended rehab center every few months. We were followed up by a surgeon. The doctors constantly checked his grafts and shunts because the child was growing and required medical attention. Later he developed epilepsy. He wasn't diagnosed officially, but it was suspected, so anti-epileptic drugs were prescribed. The child was growing, so it was really important to adjust and tighten the doses. So, actually, our life was a forever wandering between different rehabilitation centers. We were in Kiev, we were in Odessa. I really appreciate rehabilitation center in Odessa for significant contribution into the treatment process. Well, Anton went to school together with Nastya, my younger daughter, in the same year. Then he went to regular school with regular children for 1 year. We appreciate Kherson School number 7 and educators for creating this enabling educational environment. Back then there was no such concept as inclusion, but she made essential contribution. So we're sincerely grateful both to parents and peers for support. Then Anton had his first leg fracture. He was bedridden. Back then I was divorced with the father of my children, and so I was the only one to manage it. Back then I rented an apartment. I had to work to earn income for livelihood. So when Anton was at home and couldn't attend the school, it was very difficult. But for another year he spent in individual tutorship. Then we placed him into specialized school in Kherson. He went to that school for 2 more years, and then he had another fracture. Unfortunately, this fracture healed the wrong way, and eventually Anton was developed limited mobility and was in wheelchair. Well, he was 14 when I decided to place him in Oleshky. He was already a big boy. He was as high as me. He was pretty heavy, pretty big, and it was really difficult for me to handle it. So back then I paid a lot of efforts. I researched that institution, I did my homework, I explored all potential underwater pits, because I wanted to make sure that my son would feel good there. I talked to principal, I talked to staff members, I visited him without warning, I read reviews, I talked to other parents, I talked to other residents. And probably after 6 months of this homework, I proved that my decision was right. This school had become the second family for Anton. We constantly kept in touch. If they had any questions, they could contact me at any time. Oleshky is just 10 to 15 minutes driving from our home. Just cross Antonov Bridge and you're there. So there was no problem with visitations. If there were any issues related to his condition or his treatment, ladies knew that they could contact me at any time. I would just quickly come and help to solve it, because I was still responsible for medical part. I mean, every 3 months he underwent mandatory diagnostic checkup, in study examinations, and medication dose adjustments. Unfortunately, he was also dependent on medications the government didn't supply, so I had to source the medication myself. Well, in general, I have no questions to the institution, but I'm really concerned about what happened after the Russian invasion, because this day 4 years ago literally divided my life and the life of my family into before and after. During the first months, I could at least keep in touch with the institutions. The ladies sent me pictures of Anton, and as Mr. Raudsky said, they had something to eat, they had heating, they had medication. So basically they were fine, they were not abused, people were not scared, except for, well, of course, we understand that everyone was terrified and shocked because everyone was confused and had no idea what would happen next. I had my 15-year-old daughter and 5-year-old son with me at home. As for evacuation attempts suggested by volunteers, I was aware of it. I received phone calls from educators. They asked for my permission for volunteers to evacuate my son. I know for sure that the German Foundation offered evacuation, and I signed the consent. Because, well, what could I do about the occupation if we had nothing to eat myself? And I hope that Anton will receive the necessary help and medical care. In March 22, I realized we had to evacuate myself because the situation was really dangerous in our village. And then I had to make another difficult choice. I wished no one. I had to pick which child to save. I knew that I had to evacuate my younger children because Bucha happened, Irpin happened. I knew that I had a young daughter, a young pretty daughter. We were hiding her, but it couldn't last forever. So unfortunately, in March, we evacuated to Vinnytsia. I did my best to keep in touch with Oleshky. Back then, there was no access to Ukrainian network in occupied territory, and I received only some fragments of information from Russian channels. I learned that Anton was evacuated, was deported, back in autumn, after it happened, after the occupation of the right bank. And so back then I lost any connection. I had no idea what happened. It was just fragmented information coming from nowhere. I had no idea what was the source of this information. Last time, when I talked to staff members, to attendants at the institution, well, I think it was February 2023. Back then, I learned what was already mentioned previously, that they were divided into two groups. Children below 18 stayed in Skadovsk, and this other kids who are older than 18, they are also children. They are also students at the boarding school, and they're definitely not adults. Most of them, they are like my son, they are incapable. So you should not perceive him as a 24-year-old man. Unfortunately, cognitively and intellectually, he's still a child. He's not responsible for his actions, and I'm not sure that he's able to say his name. And unfortunately, I'm not even sure if he's still alive, because he required so much medical interventions and so much medical attention back before the war. And when I see prisoners of war and civilians coming back from Russia, children coming back from Russia, the conditions and their condition, I'm terrified to think about it, but probably I have already accepted this fact. Well, uncertainty is probably the most terrifying thing you may face. So cooperation with the fund at least gives me access to information. Miriam gives me the voice to speak about it, gives me a chance to talk about it and to raise awareness. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And another important thing, it would be really wrong to perceive these people from these students from Oleshky boarding school as individual cases. They were deported in a centralized, organized manner. They were accommodated in a centralized manner. I believe there should be a paper trail. Ukraine should consider them as a group. And it's really wrong to divide them into these groups, adults or not, because, well, once one person told me, return of children is not about your son, because your son is adult. No, my son is not adult. My son was a student at the institution, was under the care of institution. It's a global crime, terrible atrocity crime committed by Russian Federation against children, families, and Ukraine as a whole. Probably that's it from me. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hanna. We also invited a new principal of the boarding school to join this event. Maybe Hanna had some questions like other relatives and family members of deported children about the current fate of this institution. New principal was appointed just recently. The same happened to Kherson Regional Orphanage. Today we will have a chance to talk to a representative of that establishment. And meanwhile, let me remind you that we are broadcasting this event live in English and in Ukrainian for journalists. So if you join in our broadcast, our live stream, you also have a chance to ask your questions. Please post your questions in comments to this stream. I hope that our technical team will let us see these questions and we will be able to answer them. And by the way, we also invited other representatives of other panelists, representatives of Kherson Regional Military Administrations responsible for social sphere. Unfortunately, they could not join this event, but well, we believe there are objective reasons to it, because Kherson and Kherson region are one of the most affected areas in the country. They have pretty austere conditions, extreme conditions, and we assume they have a lot of work to do. But nevertheless, we do communicate, we stay in touch, and hopefully we will continue this cooperation. And before I give, well, next we will learn about the stories of other family members. Today we have other speakers joining us today. We will give them floor, but before that I want to give floor to co-founder of the Emile Foundation, Mariam Lambert, to learn more about the current efforts of the foundation and other activities.
As I explained to you initially, so the focus on the children who are stolen, abducted to Russia, it's very important to understand also the scale of this tragedy. So we are talking about 20,000 children have been taken since February 2022, but we also need to take into consideration the children who were taken in 2014, because that abduction didn't just start in 2022. And you can imagine the state of those children who are still in occupied territories of Russia. So our foundation organization are working with different partners. We started to work with the Ukrainian government initially, and now we are more independent. But in 2023, we managed to return 48 children under the Qatar mediation. And those children who are returned, as Anna mentioned, it's very important to understand the trauma that has been done to them when they were under occupation or in Russia. So those children are Russified, they get a Russian passport, some of them have their identity changed, some of them are militarized, and later on when they reach the age of 18, they would have to fight against their own country, maybe against their own father, against their own brothers. And that's the scale of this tragedy. So our organization is focusing not on the 20,000 because the mechanism is so complex, and also searching for all those children requires really an international effort with the whole community, international organization and countries and states to work together on locating those children, identifying them. But what is really important also when we talk about mechanism, we talk always, I hear the same word, returning. But what is very important before returning children is to understand that when deportation is taking place, when an abduction is taking place, is always when the Russians are invading a city. When the Ukrainian authorities and the Ukrainian defense didn't receive enough ammunition, they didn't receive enough aid to defend the city. And that's the moment the Russians are entering the city, they close down the city, they close the communication, they close the humanitarian aid. So there is no point of return. The whole city is closed, and then they started to take those children, not in only institution, because we are focusing on institution, but to take the children from the schools, from the kindergartens, from the house sometimes. And that's what we are talking about. Those children are not orphans. Those children have parents, they have relatives. So in this mechanism of return, we are focusing on Kherson Oblast, which is the Kherson Home Orphanage, where 48 babies from 7 months old to 5 years old were taken from that area. And also the Oleshky boarding school, as Anna mentioned, where her son Anton is. We are talking about 88, I think the number is 88, but we don't have an exact numbers, but Maria will correct me, 84 children were taken. And as Anna said, those children are all children. None of them should be considered as adult. They have disabilities. Some of them are in a wheelchair. Some of them have really serious medical issues which require constant medical care, and that's the reason why they were in this institution. And for that reason, we are talking about those two areas, and that what we are doing with our case manager and the team on the ground is to first also identify and locate and find the relatives, because one of the biggest propaganda and disinformation from Russia is saying that those children were orphans, those children were in institution. So it's very important to retrieve those children, and that's the fantastic work of Maria and the team, is to really to go on the ground in Kherson, in different regions, in order to find back the relatives who are sometimes also moved to another countries. Because once we have the relatives, we sign consent and then start the work of returning them. So the first thing we have to do also is to evacuate those relatives, because all of them were living in frontline villages. When we talk about Kherson, Kherson was liberated, but when it was under occupation, those families were still staying there because there were nowhere to go. So our foundation is making sure that once we find relatives, we sign consent, we transfer them into safe area in Lutsk, in Kyiv, in Chernivtsi, and then provide them with support, with accommodation, with financial support also, and then start the localization of those children, because this mechanism needs to be done in parallel to make sure that when the child is returned, mothers like Anna and other parents are still strong enough to cope with the trauma that the children went through when they were in Russia. And after the return, it's even more important. So we talk a lot about return, but what is very important, it's the before, finding relatives, and after, the aftercare, making sure that children are reintegrated, they have social service, they have psychologists, and they are integrated into new schools, because they are not from here, they're not from Kyiv, they're not from Chernivtsi, they are all from Kherson Oblast. So they have to relearn everything. And that's why it's very important to coordinate our effort. I'm very thankful to the Children Coordination Center under the Ukrainian government, who is making sure that every single child who is returned, who was deported and abducted, is included into a program where social services will follow them, where psychologists, where case manager, together with organizations like ours and other organizations, we will support them until as much as it takes, because it will take a long time before recovering. So now I will be very brief also. As an international organization, what we are doing is, of course, trying to put this topic on the table, but also to sensibilize and to really speak to the world leaders who can influence Russia. Because at the end of the day, whatever we do, we worked on sanction, we found individuals who were involved in the deportation, and we made a list of individual sanctions for all those people who were involved in deportation. But this is not enough. So what we are doing is advocacy. Advocacy is very important. It's to really make sure that countries who have a really strong tie to Russia, like India, the United States, the Brazil, and other countries, who can really understand that this tragedy is not a tragedy where the Russians have saved those children, as they keep telling that they have saved 700 children. It's very important to demonstrate with fact, with numbers, with family, with relatives, with testimony like Anna, that those children were not saved. They were taken, they were kidnapped, they were stolen, and they were given for adoption to Russian family. And that's what we are doing. I've been to India, we will go back to Brazil, we speak with the government of the US, because those people, they have to have the right information and not completely the side of the Russian who are completely spreading a disinformation, who is another crime for those children. And that's important to make sure that the state leader also in Europe start communicating on that and start bringing and opening a channel with Russia in order to return those children. So that's something that is extremely important. And last but not least is really making sure that all of us, together with international organizations, with the states, with the Ukrainian government, is to unite our efforts, because it's been 4 years, and every day when I see a celebration of a child who is returned, I don't celebrate. I feel ashamed, because it's been 4 years and we are returning children by small numbers. Last week it was 6 children were returned, and thankfully 2 of them we are now supporting them, because we were supporting the relatives before the child were returned. But 6 children is absolutely a disgrace for the whole international community to stand there to listen to us, and after 4 years not being able to do anything. We also thank the First Lady of the US, Melania Trump, who is now making this topic at the highest level, but it's not enough, because if all the leaders could also do the same, maybe we will go further. The faith leaders also, we are talking about the Vatican, who is really doing an important work behind the scene. We are talking about other faith leaders who could really join forces with all the international organizations and the states in order to work seriously on the children, on this aspect, because people first, as Alexander Melvichuk mentioned, people first, before talking about territories, before talking about mineral deals, before talking about peace agreement. We will not listen and also wait for any result of the peace agreement if the children topic, as well as the civilian in captivity or prisoner, are not having the first priority on the agenda. Thank you. And now we will, unfortunately, our goodwill ambassador, Alexandra Mavichuk, who has been supporting us, and we've been working together for the last 2 years, couldn't be here today because, as you know, it's the 24th of February, so she's in another country, but she kindly offered to give a message to you through a video. So Alexandra Mavichuk is our goodwill ambassador. She's part of this Center of Civil Liberties, Peace Nobel Prize, and today you will hear what she has to say about this tragedy. Thank you.
Шановні організатори, по можливості
Dear technical team, could we please play the...
I'm a human rights lawyer. I'm documenting war crimes in this war which Russia has launched against Ukraine. We have in our database of Tribunal for Putin Initiative more than 98,000 episodes of war crimes. Among these episodes, we have a lot of crimes against children. And that is why I'm confident that it's not okay that we completely lost human dimension in this peaceful process that was initiated by President Donald Trump. Recent months, we heard a lot about natural minerals, Russia's territorial claims, geopolitical interests, but we don't hear about people. We still have no idea what will be with dozens of thousands Ukrainian children who were legally deported. Because childhood has an expiration date, civil society organizations make enormous efforts to identify them and to return them back. It's not an easy task, and that is why I was so glad to know that one family from the international campaign 7 Women, 7 Lives, One Destiny has been reunited last week. I call international community to make human dimension, and particular the problem of deported children, as main priority. We must return them.
Дякую.
Thank you. And also, our foundation is mostly supporting families from two institutions, Oleshky boarding school and Kherson regional orphanage. We are also providing support to family members of children brought to Russia by foster families. And today we have Ms. Elena Kornienko joining us today. Before 2025, she administered her son regional orphanage, and now she continues to work there as a pediatrician. She also was with the kids during the most difficult time when Russians entered Kherson and abducted children. Many materials have already been published. We all know how difficult it was for staff members to hide the children and to try to prevent the deportation. Ms. Elena probably is the best person to know about it. And we will highly appreciate her input. We hope that she will tell us what she knows right now. Is there any information? What are some of the last updates about the return of children? What is the role of this institution? Does it participate in any efforts of bringing kids back? And any other useful information for family members who are desperately waiting for their kids at home. We know that only 10 students from regional orphanage returned home since 2022. These are very young children, mostly 2, 3, or 4 years old, much younger than in Oleshky boarding school. Ms. Elena, can you hear us? Ms. Elena? Maybe we have a sound problem. Ms. Elena, can you hear us? Could we kindly ask you to check your sound? Okay, and while we are working on solution of our technical team, we see that Miss Elena has joined, but we cannot hear her yet. So the fate of Kherson Regional Orphanage is a bit similar to what happened to Oleshky boarding school. 50 students from Kherson Regional Orphanage were deported, very young children, from mostly very young. These children also have complex medical conditions. Some children have parents struggling with challenging life circumstances, but all these children still have relatives and family members waiting for them home. We're supporting families of these kids. So we're working with the children from this list as well. So, do we have any updates? Do we have connection with Ms. Elena? Unfortunately, Ms. Elena cannot unmute herself. Okay.
Можливо, пані Олена нас не чує.
Probably Ms. Elena cannot hear us. Okay, so in the meanwhile, we will give a floor to another person who joined us today. Unfortunately, we cannot disclose the real name of this person. It's a relative brother who's looking for his sister. This child was deported by Russians together with a foster family. Children were adopted, and the foster family, during evacuation, decided to move all children to Russia together with family. Today we will hear story of Ivan. We will call him Ivan. We're doing it for security reasons. We have security concerns. We have already identified, we have located Ivan's sister. We know where she is right now. So it's a very sensitive matter. And now we will invite Ivan to share his story, tell about how the girl ended up in Russia. So we will learn it firsthand. Ivan, can you hear us? Do we have an image from camera? Hello, I can hear you. Thank you. Tell us, please, what happened to your family? Here we don't use any real names because of security considerations. Because this girl can be moved away at any moment, other actions may be taken, so we're really concerned, we're really careful. It's a very sensitive matter, but we still want to bring more attention to this story, hoping to facilitate the return and help her return home faster. So tell us, please, what happened? How did your sister end up in Russia? In 2022, the full-scale war started. And they were in a foster family. I lived with my grandmother. My grandmother took me home, but she was in a foster family. And this foster family moved to Russia. The foster parents decided so. I tried to contact them. Well, when my younger brother was alive, my younger brother was killed there. While my younger sister, well, I cannot find her. I have no idea where she is. No, her location was unknown. 4 months ago, I received a phone call. Sorry, we have a sound problem. Could you please check the sound? Yes, please. Now it's better. So they were moved there. Just give me a second to keep my thoughts together. For Mr. Ivan, it's a very nervous event. It's his first experience of talking to media. So obviously, please don't worry. We understand it and you have our attention. So my brother died. I lost connection to my younger sister, to my younger brother. I was told they were separated in Russia. I don't know why. The person I was talking to told me so. I was looking for her, couldn't find her. So I guess in October or November I received a phone call from Ombudsman's office. And they told me they probably changed their last name and first name. Then I contacted the foundation to learn at least something what's happening to them, where they are. The fund helped me. Now at least I know where she is. I know where she's living. I know her address. I recognized her. I identified her. So yes, I identified her, and I'm sincerely grateful to the foundation. No one could find her because it has been so long. No one had no idea what to do. No one could even give me an advice. Mr. Ivan, another very important aspect. We know that last year you took custody, or you won custody over your younger sister, and we really hope that this fact will really contribute to successful return. And we really appreciate support from Kherson administration and Kherson Child Protection Service and representatives of regional administration, because it's a very important step. In many cases, including yours, the custody is truly crucial. Now you have custody over your younger sister, and you can participate proactively in the return process. And when she returned, you will be happy to be together with her. We have indeed located Ivan's sister, and we contacted him to share this information. I perfectly remember this conversation. It was really emotional. And we hope that, yes, indeed, we will succeed in this endeavor. As long as I know, Ivan is going to follow the procedure and apply for return, and we will do our best in order to facilitate this process and support his family both before, during, and after return. And would you like to add something else? Well, no, that's it from me. I don't have anything else to say. I told you all I could. I'm just grateful to Kherson Child Protection Service for their huge support and assistance during the custody proceedings. And I'm grateful to the foundation for finding her. I haven't seen her for many years. But I immediately recognized her on a photo. I was so delighted when I saw that picture. I struggled to find the words to convey it. Now everything Ivan could do and everything we could do is already done. And so we really hope that this girl will eventually return home. Now every return is negotiated at the international level. It's very difficult and sensitive process. And of course, it's really important to give voice to the relatives and family members of these children. We want everyone to see real people behind it, not just mere statements that Ukraine wants children back. Of course, statements are important, but it's really important to hear real human voice of family members and relatives, and this is the reason why we give them venue to speak. So, do we have technical capacity to connect with Miss Elena? Miss Elena, can you hear us? I can hear you. Amazing. Miss Elena, hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know, maybe you've missed it, but we already introduced you. We told that 10 children out of were returned since 2022 from Kherson Regional Orphanage, 10 children out of 50. And we also already told a little bit about your role, that you managed to administer the institution before 2025. So could you please tell us about your current role? And maybe share some information. What do family members who are still waiting for their children back needs to know? Hello everyone, I've heard you, but unfortunately I had a technical problem with the microphone. So, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we had 64 children at our institution. When the war started in April and in May, we returned 11 kids to parents. We were looking for some. Back then, Russian military had stayed there for over a month. They were circling around us. They didn't let us to take any actions. They forced us to return to Russian territory, Russian-controlled territory. And so, from there, we quietly returned 11 children to their parents. They cooperated with our staff members proactively. But I didn't accept their offer. Of course, I was suspended. I had no information because those who didn't collaborate had no access to information. The Russians shared information with only a very limited number of staff who agreed to collaborate. So on August 1st, I was fired. Many of us, many who refused to collaborate, were summoned to interrogation. We were summoned to police. Obviously, we couldn't work. In August, I was fired. And then we all know that on October 21st, the big deportation happened. 46 children were deported. 2 more children were deported to Russian Federation on September 2nd. And the new director sent 2 more children to custody in occupied territory. So the total number of deported children is 50. 10 children have already returned. 6 children returned to their parents, but to biological families. 1 child unfortunately had severe disability and died. And for now, all children who haven't yet returned have official custodians, and now the government is working with these custodians because these children have no biological parents. In 2025, the Ministry of Health of Ukraine stopped funding to the orphanage, and the orphanage is now closed due to the lack of funding. Of course, we shared information with all law enforcement agencies. We reported everywhere. Many of our staff members testified, were interviewed, but unfortunately many children haven't yet came back. We appreciate support from charities, foundation and international partners for bringing back 10 kids. Miss Elena, you mentioned that some children have no parents. The parents were deprived of parental rights by court. But nevertheless, these children have other family members, other blood relatives. They have other family members who are willing to take custody, who do care after these children, because, well, it's very important. It's very important to understand, because Russians always claim that these children are orphans, they have no one to care after them, which is clearly not true. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking for family members and relatives. This is probably the most difficult part of the work. To build this communication and to convey this message, people often don't understand certain procedures, don't know the steps to be taken, and this is the reason why we step into this process. Thank you so much. So, another question, if you don't mind. So, as long as I understand, currently this orphanage is merged with a hospital. Probably it's also an important detail for families, this formal part, formal institutional part. So what is the orphanage is doing as an institution in order to bring kids back? What is your role in the process, and where should the family members and relatives go with these questions? Well, you can always contact the head of the institution, the child protection services, and child protection service officers will refer you to the most appropriate place and tell you what can you do in order to help with the return of your children and relatives. Do we have any questions from journalists, maybe those joining our broadcast? Or maybe journalists joining us in the hall? Okay, good. Then I once again give floor to Ms. Mariam, please.
I'm very touched by the testimony of the parents today, because it's nice that you give me the floor, but it's not about us. Today it's really about relatives, it's about mothers, it's about a brother, it's about the family of those children, because we can talk about this tragedy for months, years, but at the end of the day, those who are suffering are the families. And this is why today it's very important, as you mentioned, Maria, to really start giving more and more the floor to the victims, and to show to Russia that the propaganda needs to stop, the disinformation needs to stop. Those children have relatives, and they deserve a future with their relatives, with their mothers and fathers and grandmothers. And this is why I really want to ask the whole community, also in Ukraine, the journalists, the media, the international media, to start listening to the families, to the victim. Because whatever is negotiated everywhere, at the end of the day, the families are left alone, no information. As Anna mentioned, not having information is the worst in that situation. Even if there is no information, the family sometimes just want to hear from Maria saying there is no update, or we keep going, and to know that we are together, that we are with them, we support them. So this is why I hope that together with all of you, we will keep going and to keep giving the floor to the families. And this is why we have also launched a project which is called 7 Women, 7 Lives, One Destiny. It's to really start giving the floor to the victims, and not to celebrities, and not to politicians, and not to the states. Of course, they need to make statements, but at the end of the day, people trust people, and the families trust in you, in order to make sure that we all unite our efforts to return them, and to make Russia pay about that, because returning is one thing, and the children are traumatized, the families are traumatized, but accountability for the sake of the victims is extremely important. As Alexandra Mavichuk said, they're documenting crime. Every single child story needs to be documented in order to make sure that justice will also be part of the process. And that's what the victims are asking as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. У мене є
I have a question to Ms. Elena, a follow-up question. Ms. Elena, so when children were staying in the institution, similar to Oleshky boarding school, the director obtained custody. So formally, he was a legal representative of these children. Tell me, please. So we perfectly understand that, well, it's very important to emphasize that until now, Russia gives children only to biological families, only to bloodkin, because for them Ukraine doesn't exist. They don't recognize Ukrainian institutions, foster families, and custody documents. So basically the most important part of our work is to build communications with biological relatives. But at the same time,
саме заклад, принаймні до
formally, at least before 2025, the institution was officially authorized to be a legal representative of these children. This legal aspect, could you please tell us more about it? So is the institution authorized to apply for this return? How does it work technically and procedurally? We cooperated with the Child Protection Services. We cooperated with the prosecutor's office. We were looking for mechanisms. We were looking for biological relatives who could join the process. But unfortunately, we found only 2 relatives who later got custody. Only 2 relatives agreed to take children back. This is what we have on the ground, but the work is still ongoing. Yes, the institution is already closed, but child protection services are in place, executive authorities are in place, so the work is ongoing. Thank you. And just to wrap up, yes, indeed. We're trying to constantly keep in touch with family members, with relatives, and there's very important psychological thing here. It's about communication with families. Probably now everyone understands that there are some families who have family members in Russian prisons, prisoners of war. These people found themselves in absolutely similar situation. They're dealing with uncertainty. It's very difficult when you have no idea about what's going on to your loved ones. It really overwhelms you. It's really overwhelming, and you cannot live normal life. So in such situation, based on experience of talking to these family members, as a case manager, I can reassure you, even if there is no information, for example, last week, This is a message I received from one of the grandmothers. Do you have any updates? I say no updates. But even this short dialogue is psychologically very important for a person, well, who at least knows that she's not alone, and this story is not forgotten. This person is not forgotten. And there is at least someone to talk to and receive at least these little bits of information. Often people haven't received any phone calls for a long time, for 6 months, for a year. They have no idea where to go. Responsible officers and administrators change, of representatives of official authorities change, and you have no idea whom to call. And no one gets back to them. On our part, we try to maintain this communication to see how important it is. We try to help researchers and support such families. And of course, well, I don't want it to sound as I'm not judging and I'm not blaming anyone, but for such families it's really important to have some kind of contact and communication. They would really appreciate it. And probably that's it. We're about to wrap up our event. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them either here or after event. Do we have any questions on live stream? No. Okay.
We are all, of course, struggling with resources. So if you want to be part of the process and you want to help and want to also, we are looking for people on the ground because 20,000 children is a lot. So we are still trying to extend the team because this is a very thorough process. It's complex and it requires also a lot of trust with the families, as Maria mentioned. So you are very welcome to contact us, either the case manager from Emile Foundation, Maria. And now I forgot also to introduce Anna as a mother, but she's also a goodwill ambassador to represent all the parents from Oleshky and to at least speak on their behalf. And we have a really big team, but we are still looking for people to join. So maybe if you know someone, reach out to us and reach out to Maria. Thank you.
Дуже дякуємо.